Hey, good morning, everybody. I hope this Thursday morning finds you doing well. Welcome to Community Connections, and we have a special guest with us today. But first, I got to give my co-host a hard time just because it's tradition, and we don't want to break tradition.
Good morning, Robert. Today.
Good morning. Hey, you like my shirt?
Yes. Do you want me to say pretty in pink?
Yes. Do I look?
You look pretty in pink.
Thank you. I have had 6 people compliment me on my shirt today.
Do you want to know? You don't want to know why?
Why?
Well, because you haven't exactly been sprucing up much lately. You've been coming in here like, swag and stuff and jeans. So, our CEO's wearing a dress shirt. We got to say something to him.
Well, I was told by a wise person once, the CEO can dress any way he wants to.
That's true. But then if you can't expect us not to say something when you start
Actually
looking
dress
decent.
nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there you have it.
Okay. But why isn't this blue instead of pink? Everybody's pointing out the pink, not the blue.
I don't think you want me to answer that question.
I do. I asked it. Come on, say something smart, Alec, so we can move on.
I'm sure that it's because you look. The pink is what it's drawn out, and
Yeah.
it's complementary to your coloring. I don't know. I don't know why people are talking about the pink.
I don't. Why are we even talking about this when we got
don't
much
know. Yes,
more
let's-
important things to talk about today?
Reel it in.
We will reel it in. Hey, so this morning we're going to be talking about CASA, which stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate, and we have as our guest today Kelly Diaz with CASA of Lynchburg.
CASA of Central Virginia.
CASA of Central Virginia, which covers Lynchburg and where else?
Lynchburg, Bedford, Campbell, Amherst, Appomattox, and Nelson.
Okay. Pretty much all the area that we cover in Vision 30, really, isn't it?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's really good to have you here.
It's good to have you too. And I thought the shirt was orange and blue, and I was going to get excited because I'm a Gator fan. So
Oh, you're a Gator fan.
yeah, I am. I know it's a sad year for us, but
Yeah.
I'm a faithful fan. So
Well, I'm a Vols fan, and we're having a great
listen, I'm
year.
happy for you. I am
are.
rooting for them. I'm rooting for them. I want them or Georgia to win it all. I mean,
We had 15 years of drought.
exactly. I've never been happier than when they beat Alabama a couple weeks ago.
Yes,
It was
yes.
great.
Well, it's excellent to have you with us. Tell us a little bit about CASA. Now, we know it stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate. But what makes it a special advocate as opposed to a regular advocate?
Well, our advocates are, like you said, court appointed. So the judge actually appoints our volunteers to a case of a child who has been removed from their home or who is still in their home under a protective order due to some type of abuse or neglect.
Right.
And so at CASA, we recruit, train, and support volunteers who are essentially the eyes and the ears of the judge. They are able to, visit with that child, get to know that child, visit with the family, any relatives that are important in this child's life. They're able to know the foster parents. They're able to, know the guardian ad litem, and they communicate with teachers, doctors, everybody in order to gather information to provide for the child's best interest through a court report that goes directly to the judge.
So how are they different from the guardian ad litem?
So guardian ad litems are paid attorneys for children here in the state of Virginia, and our volunteers are just that. They're volunteers. Guardian ad litems are often working for many, many children. We had a guardian ad litem recently tell us, there might be months where they have to write reports for 30 children, where our CASA volunteers are writing report for maybe 1 or 2 children in that case. So the advocacy is very different because of the time that they're able to invest in that case.
Yeah, can really focus on it, right?
Yes.
So I worked in CPS early on in my career, and I remember going to court and dealing with the guardian ad litem. And then one day I showed up and there was a CASA worker. It was my first time being really exposed to that. It's well, what's a CASA? I knew what a guardian ad litem was, but here was this person who was a volunteer. And I learned to appreciate their work very much because they could really focus. I didn't always know if that guardian ad litem had even seen the child or spoken to the child, but I was pretty sure the CASA worker had when they show up.
Absolutely.
And there was a difference in the quality of the case there.
Our volunteers are required to visit with the child at least twice a month.
Yeah.
One of those visits are to be in their home or their foster home so that they can see where they lay their head at night, what their surroundings are, all of those things. So they really, it's relationship-based advocacy.
Yeah. So, just for the uninitiated who maybe never been to family court or seen this happen, right? So, a child's been removed from a family, and everybody's showing up at court, and the state has an attorney because the state has made this action.
Right.
And they're going to, you think they would advocate for the child, but they're really advocating for the state's position, which has already been decided. And then the family's going to have an attorney, usually, right? Even
Right.
if it's a court appointed. So somebody's guarding the safety or the rights of the family.
Right.
But who's there to voice for the children, particularly if it's a
Correct.
small child, they can't advocate for self. And that's
Right.
the point of the guardian ad litem or the CASA worker, right?
Right. So back in 1977, there was a judge in Seattle, Washington, whose name was David Sukup, and that was exactly what he saw. He saw attorneys for the family, he saw DSS, he saw everyone represented, but no one there to tell him, because the child was too young, what does this child want? What does this child feel? What's going on with this child? I want to hear this child's voice, but I can't. And so he was the one who thought of the idea of CASA and, decided to hold a focus group and was really shocked when he saw how many people attended. And that's when CASA was started back in 1977. And now there's 947 programs across the United States, 27 here in the state of Virginia. And he actually became a CASA volunteer after he retired. So yes, you're exactly right. Our CASA volunteers are able to give that child a voice where otherwise they would not have one.
Yeah. It's easy for them to get lost. I mean, the whole
Yeah.
thing is about the child,
Right.
and they can get lost
Yes.
in all of this.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, in a minute, we're going to talk about, how do you become a CASA volunteer?
Great.
What's your perspective on this, Claudia, as a Vision 30 partner and as somebody who's focused on either keeping kids safe in their own home or making sure they're with a family that's supported by a faithful community? How do you see CASA playing a role in the river analogy?
So I think that the CASA volunteers actually are in the river with the kids. They're not living with them, but I think
Right.
they're really as close to living with them as a lot of the other players in the system. We adopted our 12, and there was a big difference in the way that the cases went when the kids had appointed a CASA and when they didn't. We have one of our sons who's guardian ad litem, who was getting paid, referred to him as a her in court, which meant you never met him, knew nothing about him. The court, we got him when he was 20 months old, and court continued till he was 4 before he was adopted. And all the way through, there was nobody who ever met him in person, never knew who he was, right? And we think he ended up in a good place. I mean, we raised him, so I think it ended up okay. But it could have been faster.
Yeah.
It could have gone smoother. We have another sibling group that we adopted who's CASA for years after we adopted them would email me about once every 6 months and just, hear how they were doing. And she was determined that they would, end up in a good place, and she followed that through. And so in the situations, I think our kids, when they look back at their history, if there's one person they remember, it isn't usually
that right?
their caseworker. It's their CASA, the ones that had one, that they remember that person cared about them during their journey through the system and through court and everything. So,
And along those lines, often caseworkers will change. So foster homes may change, caseworkers may change, and with those changes in a foster home comes, new workers, new teachers, new everything. But that CASA worker always stays the same. So
Right.
I completely agree with you.
So it's really keeping the child from just being a case number, and it really puts a face and a name and a personality
Yeah.
and a hope and a future and all of that stuff behind it, isn't it?
Right.
Wow. So because of CASA, is every child in Virginia able to have this special advocate?
No, you have to be appointed by the judge. So we have people call our office and say, "Hey, can my grandchild needs a CASA volunteer or this person," and we cannot do that. We have to be appointed by the judge in order to be able to provide a CASA volunteer for a child.
So why would a judge do it for one child but not maybe the next?
So that's a great question. So, for example, in Lynchburg, that's where most of our cases come from. So our judges there, our judges are very supportive of the CASA program, and so they look at the cases and they know that we don't have enough volunteers. So they try to choose the ones that they think would benefit the most from having a CASA volunteer on that case. So right now we have 81 children on our waiting list waiting for a CASA volunteer. So 81 cases that have been appointed to us, but we don't have a volunteer to serve them. So, which is extremely unfortunate, because we know that children who have a CASA volunteer are 50% less likely to reenter foster care and spend an average of 8 months less in foster care. So
Would you say that again? That's pretty.
it's pretty powerful. Yeah,
Yeah.
50% less likely to reenter foster care when they have a CASA volunteer, and they spend an average of 8 months less in foster care when they have one. So 81 children not having one is a burden
Yeah.
to us. So we're always trying to recruit more CASA volunteers to be able. We want that to be flipped. We want to have 81 CASA volunteers waiting for children instead of children waiting for CASAs.
I mean, that's a Vision 30 thing, right? If we
Definitely.
could make that happen, right?
Yeah. And I think that there are a lot of people out there who would say, being a foster parent isn't going to be something I can do right now. I feel like this is a space that God wants me to be in for whatever reason. It's a calling. It's something that touches my heart for a reason. But that's not me right now for whatever reason. But there is a child out there that you can, guide through the space as a CASA volunteer. Then you don't have to have them live with you. You're seeing them once a month and writing a report. That's not quite as big of an ask, but yet a powerful way to change those statistics. And I'm always talking about changing the statistics of the future. It's a way that a person can step in and really make a difference in the life of a kid or a sibling group, because a CASA is assigned to a sibling group, correct?
Yes. So, we have cases with one child. We have some cases. Sometimes if we have a large sibling group, we'll put more than one CASA volunteer on that sibling group. It just kind of depends, but yes.
And how often do they have to go to court?
So there's a court timeline, and they try to, the court timeline is 11 to 14 months. So within those 11 to 14 months, they want to try to be able to return that child home safely or find a safe and permanent home. That doesn't always happen, for sure. Sometimes they end sooner, sometimes they go on and on. But, sometimes you're not in court that often. That's a misconception that is had. I would say maybe once every couple of months you're in court.
I think there's 90-day hearings.
Yeah, there's
They're
like a 30, a
required-
90.
Right.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's 90 days. So
Yeah.
So an individual who's maybe heard something today that sparks their interest, but they're thinking, I don't know if my schedule and my time, right? Because when a judge says you need to be in court, you need to be in court, so you have to leave work or whatever. But like you said, you're probably going to know that 90 days out that you have a court thing, right? So you can arrange that.
Yes, you do. You know those dates well in advance.
Okay. So if I became a CASA worker, how many hours would I put into a case?
So that's a great question. So the first step to becoming a CASA volunteer is to attend an information session. I conduct 2 of those each month, and they're an hour long. And it is basically going over what the role of a CASA looks like. And I have a veteran CASA there with me who also answers casework questions and things like that. And it's just a great way, no obligation way to find out more. We have everyone do that so that they do understand what they're getting into. I would say that the time we tell people that you need to have about 3 to 5 hours a week available to do this. Sometimes it might be on the higher end when you're first getting that case and learning about this child and what's going on and who everybody is. But then there's some weeks where the time is much less than 3 hours. So, you definitely need to have time availability. A lot of our volunteers are retired or maybe empty nesters or single, but we do have people who are employed full-time, who have children, all of that as well. It's just truly how you're able to manage your time. You just have to kind of figure that out on your own, which is why we show you that information session and let you kind of see what the role looks like so that you can know if you think you can manage that.
A CASA volunteer doesn't have to have any particular kind of educational background. It doesn't have
Nope.
to be a social worker, counselor.
And we do all your training. So once you attend that information session, you would submit your application. You go through an interview with us, and then we do a 9-week training, one evening a week for 3 hours. And, that's your training. And so we also do continued training. So we have trainings all the time that you are optional to attend. And you're very well supported in our organization. That's something that we're really focusing on, is making sure that every volunteer has an advocate manager. But in addition to that, we want you to feel supported by the entire staff. So our staff, our board, other volunteers, having cross-organizational relationships are really important to us, because it's a heavy role. So we want you to know that we're there to support you, and it's also a confidential role, so that you have people that you can talk to about it as well.
If we could make this happen, you need 81 CASA workers right now just to clear the cases now. So you need more than 81 CASA workers,
Right, yeah.
right?
We need a lot.
Makes me think of that pastor down in Brownsville, Texas. Why don't you set this up?
All right, Pastor down in Brownsville, Texas. We're going to look at a video about Stand Sunday. And Stand Sunday is, you've heard us talk about this every week for a while, because it's something we're committed to. It's on November the 13th. We'll roll the film, but it's the idea of who's going to stand for these kids and what can happen if a church has a vision to make this happen. So think about CASA while we're watching this, but also think about other ways that you can get involved, and we'll watch the video.
So roll the film.
Did it make-
There are 30,000 children that are in the foster care system today in the state of Texas. There are 500,000 children that are in the U.S. that's in the foster care system. And I said, who would stand with me today for these kids? That day, Nedra Wade, she stood and raised her hand, and she said, Pastor, I will. And then another person stood and said, I will. And another stood and said, I will. And another stood and said, I will. Well, after the process started in our church, and family after family, within 3 months, 39 children were placed in families in our church.
Jesus, Jesus.
What if there was more families waiting for children than children waiting for families? So we called Child Protective Services. And they said, if that happens in any county, that will be the first ever.
Precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust Him more.
So that's what happened in Texas when one pastor and one church said that they were willing to stand for the kids. And so we're only a few weeks away now from Stand Sunday. It's still not too late to plan to do something on that Sunday, but you can have Stand Sunday anytime you want to. There's materials that are focused on that day. I'm friends with a lot of people who across the country who are doing Stand Sundays in their communities on that day. That's what makes it special, because it's kind of a national thing. But one of the things we always focus on, and we always want to keep our focus there, is on these kids. But I guarantee you, and I know Kelly can say this for sure, that when you step into a space like that, it's not just the kids that benefit and change. The way that taking on something that's bigger than you feel like you can do on your own is when God gets to do cool stuff. And so signing up for something like this, yes, it's scary. Yes, it's unknown territory. Yes, all those things, yes. But at the end, yes, my life was changed because I was able to do something like this. And so we're just hoping and praying that the churches in the region will get involved in Stand Sunday, and more importantly than that will happen. And so maybe that's going to be something that comes out of Stand Sunday, is that
That's amazing.
CASA is going to end up with more volunteers, and maybe we'll be the first program ever to have a waiting list, waiting for CASA assignments, because you're saying the judges know you're short. So we don't know how many would get appointed
Exactly.
if there was in there. So probably way more than 81 are
Yes,
needed. But
absolutely.
there are certainly that many people available with that kind of time in our community that God is calling to do something, and this may be what He's calling them to do.
Yes.
So I'm going to look and talk to my staff here at Patrick Henry Family Services for a minute. Right, we all get paid for doing this, and we all work very hard to do it. Sometimes beyond, the hours. But unless you have some skin in the game, so I think this would be a cool way for staff, and we've had staff part of CASA before, but we've not made this ask for a while. But maybe consider just taking one child. And I think it would put you into this world and into the system and help you understand on a more personal and emotional level just what the struggle is for a child. So, and remember, Patrick Henry will help, you get some paid time off for volunteering. So this would be a beautiful thing. Don't you think, Claudia?
Yeah, that'd be great.
It would.
It's amazing.
So we need 81.
We need 81. Well, we served 218 children last year with 80 volunteers. So that speaks a lot to our volunteers, but we had 154 we were unable to serve last year. So
So really need more than 81.
but we have a class right now of 8 people, and we're excited about that. We have 4 men. Men are something we always need greatly. About 50% of our cases are boys, but only 26% of our volunteers are men. So that's something that's really important as well.
Yeah.
We know.
Does the judge tend to appoint a CASA worker for older kids, younger kids? What makes it stand out in the judge's mind that this child really needs a CASA worker?
I think that when they just read what the situation is, what the type of abuse or neglect is, if it's, a substance abuse is huge. It's in about 97, 98% of our cases right now. So I'm really not sure that I'm equipped to answer that question, but because I'm really not sure what goes into it, but because you just see all kinds of different things, truly.
I think that there's one thing that really gives people pause with CASA, because it's a big commitment, right?
Yeah.
It's not I'll go do one thing one time. It's an ongoing commitment. But I always like to talk about the ors, of is it this or this? And so one of my favorite things to do when I was doing fundraising for an adoption agency was say, I'll give you a choice tonight. You can sign up to adopt a teenager, or you can give me $1,000, right?
That's
great.
great.
That's an easy decision. I don't want to adopt a teenager, right? But it's kind of that where is your place and what's your or? And this is a really meaningful way to get involved in something significant where you have that deep impact without it being a 24/7 thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's-
And one thing,
go
can I
ahead.
say one thing real quick?
Yeah,
One thing that you said stood out to me, because you said a lot of people say it's hard, and it is so hard. And I had a volunteer tell me one time that people would say to her, like, this work is hard. Like, I don't know how you do it. It's hard. And she said, what the children go through is hard. And if I can come along and make it a little bit easier for them and make it a little bit better for them along the way, then that's what I'm going to do. But it's so true. What they're going through is really hard stuff. So...
So I was going to ask about retention. Do you guys have an issue trying to? You've recruited them and you've trained them. Are you getting turnover because it's hard?
So we actually ask our volunteers to either stay for 1 year or the length of their first case. Most volunteers do stay for longer than that. During the pandemic, we had, some people step away for different reasons, but we try to retain as many as we can. But like I said, that it is hard work, and so it's that's another reason we want to have more volunteers, so that we can give our volunteers breaks in between the cases, so that they can have a minute to kind of absorb all that they just went through and take some time.
So define hard. We're not talking busy hard, or
I think it's just
hard.
I think it can be emotionally hard. I think that there are people who will love different pieces of it. So when I do interviews with people, they'll say, I will love, like me, I would love the investigative part of it. I love to find stuff out. That's the piece of it that I would really enjoy. There's people who are like, I can't wait to, meet the child and spend time with the child. That's the big thing for them. Or I can't wait to just be in court and get to see, there's a lot of different reasons people do things. But I definitely think what people say that they find that they think will be the hardest part is if the case doesn't go the way they want it to go, which that can happen. That's a absolutely real thing that we always tell people. This may not end the way you want it to end, but you can always know that you have truly changed that child's story. You have changed their life, but it may not end the way that you want it to end. Also, another thing, you may not be able to continue contact with that child afterwards. Sometimes families want that chapter to close and they don't want any further contact. Sometimes they do. It just kind of depends, So it can be emotionally hard because you're going to hear things that are difficult to hear, especially for a child to go through. Yeah. So, but like I said, it's hard, but what they go through is way harder.
I'm sure rewarding as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I had a man last night on my information session, and he is retired now, and he said, until I became a CASA volunteer, I never knew what my life was supposed to be like. This is what I was supposed to do my whole life. And he's just amazing. And so, just incredible. And he's advocated for 17 children and truly, truly impacted their lives tremendously.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. You have any more questions you'd like to ask?
I think I'm good.
Yeah. So tell us, how did you personally get involved in this?
So I actually did not know what CASA was when I first moved here. It's funny because CASA's been here for 33 years, and I was in the nonprofit world and did not know what it was. And then I met our executive director at a retreat one time, and we just really connected. And she had this job opportunity open, and she called me and she said, "Do you want to meet with me?" And I was like, does she want to be my friend? Like, what's going on? I didn't know she had the job opening. So I met with her, and I love people. So volunteer recruitment is one of my favorite things because I love to just get to know people and engage with the community. And so it's very personal to me in the sense that I had my brother growing up was a child who was from my father, but not my mother. And so his biological mother was very neglectful and abusive to him when he was a baby. And my mom stepped in the role and, raised him from the time that she became involved in his life, which was when he was about 2 years old. And she just impacted his life in such a way that, she not only provided him basic human needs, but just so much love and so much support and care. And my brother actually passed away when he was 21 in a car accident when I was 10, but he is still the person that when I think who has impacted my life the greatest, he's one of the top people in that short amount of time. And, every day that I go to work, I think of him, and I just want to honor his memory. And if I can help a child, who is going through something like he was by my small role in this organization, then I certainly am proud to do that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We were talking before we started that one of the nonprofits you worked for was Daily Bread.
Yep, I did. Yeah, for 6 years I was there.
Yeah, we're big Daily Bread fans here, aren't we?
Yep.
And so you've been doing this kind of work for a while now, huh?
Yes, I've definitely the term helper. I love to help, but it's just something I think that certain people have that kind of in them, right? That they just want to be a helper. And so I'm always kind of like on the outskirts of the scene, though. I'm not like the direct helper, but I can get things organized and find the people to do the actual hard work.
Well, it takes a lot of people doing a lot of different things.
It does. And, my work at the Daily Bread was great. I met just the guests there were just incredible. And I met a man there who actually I had the privilege with to be as he passed away, and he impacted my life so greatly, and I think I equally impacted him. And just to meet someone who was very different than people I would meet in my normal life, right? He just really taught me to not be afraid to to engage with people who are not like you, to like seek people out who are different, and you can just learn so much from them. And I learned so much from him, and his picture actually hangs in my office because I always want to be reminded by the impact he had on my life of just, changed my life, somebody who was very different and very unexpected. So yes, I was very thankful.
All right. Well, I know besides volunteers that CASA has other needs, and you're going into a season where, like all of us, trying to raise the funds to make this happen. So we'll give you a chance to look right in the camera there and make your best pitch for CASA.
Sure. Well, one thing I was going to talk about is we have our race coming up. We have our 8th annual superhero run coming up on November the 5th, and that is one of our largest fundraisers. It is a wonderful time to come out, and we have a 5K run, walk, and kids 1 mile fun run, and you can still register for that. That's a great way to support CASA. But yes, money is always the bottom line. We can't recruit volunteers unless we have financial giving as well. So if you don't want to be a CASA volunteer, you have the or is to give to CASA. So you either become a CASA volunteer or you give to CASA.
There you go. You have no other choice. It's one or the other.
One or the other, yes. And we actually have a new program called CASA Sidekicks, which for some of the people who can't be as involved as an advocate, it's a way that you can be involved with CASA, but give an hour of your time each month to something like an event like our superhero run or a golf tournament or office help, things like that. So, yeah.
All right. So lots of different opportunities. Probably, right, one size doesn't fit all, so there's probably something that you can do.
We will find
and
something.
There's something you should do for the sake of the kids.
Absolutely.
It's not about cost. It's not about Patrick and Family Services.
Right.
It's about the kids.
Absolutely.
And you heard the need. So pray about that, would you? And what you might do to respond to help this worthy organization doing some amazing things.
Yes.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. It was really just so much fun to be on here and so great to meet you both and to spend this time with you. So thank you for letting me come on and share a little bit more.
You're welcome. I'm going to let
And
you
for
have the same
partnering with
word.
us.
I'm going to let you say the last word as long as you don't say, show us the film.
I would never.
You just
ever
said, show us the film.
No, you were the
said
one who
that,
said
actually.
that.
No, you said show the film. You did. And now we're going to end with a video. So key it up. Key up the video.
Let's just watch it.
Nobody gets to choose their family. If a person is fortunate enough to be born into a healthy family, then life can be much like floating down a smooth, gentle river in the summertime. But an unhealthy family is like a dangerous river, filled with rocks, debris, and fast-moving water. This river swiftly leads to the steep waterfall of adulthood, tragically forming a new river of dysfunction. Even if you aren't born into an unhealthy river, there are many streams that cause a person to get there. But there is only one way to get out, and that is through a meaningful relationship. Across our region, there are many agencies, churches, and families who are devoted to helping children escape from unhealthy rivers. Some feel their role is to wade in and rescue children. They foster, adopt, or provide safe families. Others stand by the river and support the rescuers by providing what they need. Still, others are upstream and stand in the gap to keep children from ending up in the negative situations. At Patrick Henry Family Services, we see ourselves as having an additional role. We are running up and down the shores of the unhealthy river, screaming, "Can't you see the children in the water? You have to do something." Vision 30 is a 10-year initiative. By 2030, we envision a region where all children are safe in their own family, or with caregivers who are supported by a local faith community. So, where do you stand at the river? Are you upstream, keeping families together and strong by standing in the gap? Are you in the river, directly impacting children? Are you on the shore, providing support for the brave folks who have entered the river? Or are you just passing by without noticing? No matter who you are, come down to the river with us. Let us help you find your place. Not only will lives be changed, but you will never be the same.